Today we are going to be checking out the ultra compact Cheerson CX23, sent to me courtesy of gearbest.com. Pretty exciting little quad. Let's get into the review and check it out. The Cheerson CX23 is a tiny, fit in the palm of your hand, GPS-enabled, brushless camera drone that some people will claim is a competitor to the likes of the DJI Spark. But in my opinion, it is not a serious competitor to the Spark. It does not have as good a camera as you're gonna find on the Spark. No image stabilization either. But what this does have that the Spark does not have is 5.8 gigahertz FPV. And that is a pretty cool little feature in such a small quad. And the 5.8 gigahertz works very well. It gives you real-time transmission of what your quad is shooting. So that is definitely a very big plus. One downside is there is no control of the camera via the transmitter, so you can't tilt it or anything like that while you're in the air. If you want to adjust your camera angle, you're going to have to land it and do so manually. Also, the lens is fairly narrow on the quad. The camera in general kind of reminds me of like the Cyma X5C or something like that. So it is kind of like hobby grade components in this quad and more or less a toy grade camera. So a little disappointing on the camera, but it is pretty cool that this does have the GPS and it will stay where you put it when you put it in the air. So if you're flying this on a calm day, you can get some pretty decent video. The video's not half bad, but I would have liked to have seen a wider angle lens and a slightly better camera. Maybe even put 1080p on this because the camera is only 720p. As far as the camera and the flight characteristics on the CX23, they're pretty good. The GPS works very well. I've flown this on some pretty windy days and it is able to fight the wind. It was basically flying sideways trying to hold its position on the one day I was flying it in very considerable wind. And I'm gonna roll some audio on that wind right here just to give you an idea how windy it was. So you get the idea there. It was pretty windy and this thing was fighting it and holding its position pretty well. I mean, it was sideways, but it is staying in the same spot. So pretty impressive for this little 225 gram quad to hold its position like that. It will fly in altitude hold mode, so you can turn the GPS off. So if you want to fly it a little bit more sporty, it will do that. And this one is pretty loud, so keep that in mind as you're flying this around, or if you're thinking about purchasing it. People will know this is in the air when you are flying it nearby. Also, this does have the option to circle you, and that works pretty well, and you're able to control kind of like what the camera's shooting as you're circling, so that's definitely a nice feature. The return to home works very well. Every time I've done it, it has landed within 3 steps or so of where it is taken off from, and you're also able to kind of control where it's gonna land. So if it's gonna come down, you know, depending on where you're taking off from, if you're taking off near water or something like that, you don't want it to land in the water, obviously. You do have the option to hit return to home and then just kind of control it via the pitch and roll stick where it's going to land. It also has the auto takeoff and auto land. Auto takeoff gets a little squirrely. It kind of like eases into the auto takeoff and kind of starts to go forward a little bit. So I would recommend just taking this one off manually, but the auto land works very well. What I really like about the Cheerson CX23 package is it truly is an all-in-one solution. It has your quadcopter with battery, it has transmitter with battery, and it has your FPV monitor with rechargeable batteries. So you don't need any sort of AA's, AAA's, or 9 volts or whatever. All the batteries are internal and you can recharge them. Also with the 5.8 gigahertz FPV, you don't have to mess around with any sort of app and link up your phone or anything like that and worry about compatibility. You can just take this right out of the box and you're ready to go. One thing that was kind of screwing me up with this particular quad was charging the battery. For this particular battery, you actually have to turn the battery on to charge it, which I've never seen before. So you'll plug the charging station in a wall socket and then turn the battery on and then plug it into the charging dock. And then the manual says it'll be green while it's charging and turn red when it's completely charged, but it is the opposite. It'll be reddish when it's charging and then kind of go a little orange and then be green when it's fully charged. So I got a few flights in where I didn't have a completely full battery because I thought the battery was charged because the manual says it's red when it's fully charged, but it's actually green. So be aware of that as you're charging the battery. You want to wait for the green light, which seems fairly obvious, but I actually read the manual in this one and it told me it was going to be red when it was fully charged. Also, it is very nice that it has the OSD feature built into the quad and the FPV transmission, although I'm not a huge proponent of OSDs, and this one is a little bit cluttered. And I apologize that I never recorded the FPV feed with the OSD on it in the flight review. I will roll some footage off of my hat cam where I believe you'll be able to see it pretty well. It is nice to know your battery voltage and your distance and your GPS lock and things like that. But most of the time I just kind of relied on the transmitter to beep at me and vibrate to alert me that I needed to land. And that is another nice feature. Along with the beeping, you get a vibration from the transmitter telling you your battery is low, you should land. I found the CX-23 to be very reliable and had great range on it. I've flown a pretty good distance away from myself and a pretty good altitude. And I even was able to explore a local elementary school where I fly quite a bit. And I never noticed that there was a couple trees growing right through the middle of the building in a little courtyard. And I was able to discover that here with the Cheerson CX-23. So another plus of having, you know, the aerial photography, you can see things that you wouldn't normally see. Overall, I think this is a pretty impressive little piece of tech. Wish it had a better camera, but the GPS, the 5.8 gigahertz FPV, and the Circle Me function, it does have some nice options to it. So the $260 price tag may be a little bit steep and might steer some of you away. If it had the better camera on it, I would say definitely check it out. But it's basically a toy grade camera and it might keep some of you from checking this one out. So let's get into the flight review and see how it flies. The binding process for this one's a little bit different, or at least the calibration. So let's go through it here. First, I'm going to turn on my FPV monitor, and this monitor is pretty decent. No visible antenna on it though, so I'm not sure, you might be able to get a better signal out of, you know, something else. So you turn your transmitter on, it'll boot up. Then you're going to come under here and turn your quadcopter on, and one press is going to light it up, and then press it again, or press and hold. One press, press and hold, and there we go, it should turn on. There you go, the ESCs are booting up. So this does have landing legs, which I elected to take off because I kind of like the real small form factor. And I'm not sure if you can see the screen here. It is pretty bright out, but you are getting a very nice FPV feed. No satellites yet. On the transmitter here, you're gonna have your, like a little LCD screen. It's gonna tell you the battery voltage, which mode you're in, distances, and things like that. So definitely a nice transmitter. Has dual antennas here. One con on it, I would say, is the screen and the antennas don't really mesh super well. Kind of like uncomfortable. You kind of got to bend them to get the monitor on there. And the monitor tends to flop around just a little bit, so be aware of that. And to calibrate this for GPS, to calibrate the compass, you're going to want to go down here to the mode button. It is in the lower left here, and you're going to want to keep pressing it until it says on your screen calibrate compass. First you're going to rotate it horizontally, so you take your quad and just rotate it like this and check your transmitter until it tells you to rotate it vertical, and it just did. So now we're going to rotate it vertically until it tells us that it's done, and it's just going to go back to its normal screen, which it just did. So now what you have to actually do is power off your quadcopter. A little bit different on how they do this, and power off your transmitter. Always do that in that order because you want to have possible control in case your quad takes off or something like that. So now we're going to turn the transmitter back on. It'll beep like that. And now we'll turn our quad back on, and it should be calibrated. So the ESCs are booting up. Picture is coming back. We'll wait till we get some satellites here. It does say we have 9 satellites. So, quick on the transmitter. Auto land, auto takeoff, return to home. This is your mode selector. It defaults to altitude hold. So if you push it again, that says A up there in altitude hold, and now I pushed it so it says B. And this is your camera function. So a short press is going to take a photo, long press is going to start your video. There are these rollers up here, but they are non-functioning on this quad. Possibly we're going to give you some sort of camera movement enabling to tilt and maybe iris or something like that, but we got nothing. Those do not work. And then nothing on the back. So a couple ways to start this up. First, I'm going to start recording my video. So I'm going to press and hold. And you do get a timer that starts counting up here. You also get your GPS distances and your number of satellites up here, battery voltage, tells you which direction the quad is facing. So it also gives you a little SD card information, I believe. So to launch this, we're going to push the auto launch for now. And this is a little bit iffy on the auto launch, so I might suggest you don't do the auto launch. Well, you'll see in a minute, hopefully. So it'll idle up the motors, and then it kind of like, you know, I haven't touched anything other than the button, so it's going to raise up to a certain level, right about there or so, and it's going to sit. And as you can see, it's a pretty calm day here today, but GPS lock seems to be pretty good. Maybe drifting a little bit slightly here and there. So let's do an auto land just to show you that. Maybe bring it back a little bit. Initiate the auto land. You're gonna press it and hold, and it's gonna bring it right down for you. And I kind of guided it a little bit with the pitch and roll stick. So the other way you can do this is to go both sticks down and out, and that's gonna idle up your motors. And then just give it throttle yourself. So that's gonna put it up. The other thing about this quad is it's pretty loud. So let's just let it sit there for a second. We'll do a little walk around. So the GPS hold is working pretty well. Let's go up a little bit. We'll bring it over here this way. And I do like the form factor without the landing legs. Look at that. It gives it like a real sleek look. I seem to get better FPV reception when I had the landing legs down. I think that was because I could kind of tilt the antenna down manually. So let's go up a little bit. And you will notice this is a fairly narrow lens. So, but the camera is adjustable. It will go like straight down. And basically I have it pointed mostly straight forward here. So I'm just gonna let it sit up there. It is in GPS lock. And I'm gonna say, you know, this one comes in at like 260 bucks. It's a little bit steep. I wish the camera was a wide angle lens. We got like a B on our antenna here, get out of there. I wish it had a wide angle lens. I also wish the camera picture quality was just slightly better. Like if you took the camera from the UDI U31W and put it on here, I feel like it would be a better option for you. So we're sending it out here. FPV is getting a little sketch, but it's staticky, but I can still see like what I'm shooting. So we're heading out away from us here. Oof, man, the bees are out here today. Maybe they're attracted to the FPV signal or something. So it's out there, I got it just sitting. Let's turn it around towards us, me. You guys are at home, I'm standing here in the field. So let's see, am I in that shot? A little bit hard to tell. Let's try go back here. We're big time staticky. Let's bring it back. See if our picture improves at all. I think I see the pavilion. Yeah, I definitely do. Back at the pavilion today. And this one, as I think I said earlier, this one is pretty loud. So you're not gonna be sneaking up on anybody with this quad. and no gimbal, no image stabilization or anything like that. So while we got battery here, why don't we send it out? I'm gonna send it out over the cornfields here. Maybe even, let's see how far we can go here. I mean, send it out a decent length. So, I believe we're basically at the edge there by the cornfields, maybe a little bit farther. And I'm gonna hit the return to home. Looks like we're bobbing a little bit there, but that might just be, yeah, it's sort of steadied itself there. So I'm gonna hit return to home here, long press, and then it's gonna give you a beep like that. It did raise its elevation on its own, and now it's heading back towards me. And moving pretty quick too. Comes back pretty quick. Doesn't seem to turn around, it seemed to stay in the direction that it was facing. And you can manipulate the controls with the pitch and roll stick. I believe if you give it throttle, it's gonna cancel your return to home. I could be wrong on that. We'll test that again in a second. So it looks like it's gonna come down a couple feet away from the landing pad. I am gonna elect to move it towards the landing pad here, just because I don't have the landing legs on it and I don't want it to land in the grass. So then once it lands here, you are gonna have to kind of kill the motors yourself. So both sticks down and in. And it does seem to take quite a few seconds to get that to work. So let's do another, let's see if that, if we send it out here. Let's just send it out just for a real, we don't have to go too far. Now I'm gonna hit return to home. And it's probably gonna go up a little bit, maybe, possibly. It turned a little. Now it's coming back. So I guess it always doesn't necessarily raise your altitude. So now let's see what happens if I hit the throttle. Is that gonna cancel the, nope, that does not cancel it. So what happens if I hit it again? Okay, so you long press it again to cancel it. So if for some reason you wanted to cancel your return to home, that's how you would do it. And I'm gonna walk out here and demonstrate the circle me feature of this quad, which this one gets a little screwy with it. I'm gonna go up a little bit, and I probably don't have the camera at the right angle to do this, but we're gonna try it. So right now we're in GPS, which is labeled B on your transmitter. And speaking of bees, we got this little guy. He's along for the ride. Can you see him? He likes this antenna. I don't know if that's giving off some sort of signal or whatever that he's picking up. So to put this in circle me mode, you're gonna push and hold the mode button. And then it's gonna change this to a C. And then this thing's gonna kind of turn on its own. Let's see if we are in the shot. We are in the shot. So it seems to be, and you can, so it's not pointed at me now, so I am gonna give this some yaw. And there we go, now it's turned towards me. You can control this while it's circling you. And I do have a really staticky picture. I'm not sure if that's lower battery or if we're just not getting a very good FPV reception. So there we go, it is gonna circle. It's a pretty wide radius, and I'm gonna actually cancel it here because I don't want it to hit the pavilion. So I'm gonna raise up above that, and I believe now we're still in circle me mode. So I'm gonna push it out, and now we're in just altitude hold, no GPS. So if I bring it in here, it is gonna keep going this way, but it's gonna hold its height fairly well. I'm gonna get a little bit more aggressive in this mode. So I'll fly it around a little bit like this for you. And as I said, it is a fairly loud quad. You can probably hear that. I think that the upside down motors in the rear there have something to do with that. So I don't like to get too sporty with this one. You do notice that the battery will sag a little bit. I'm gonna put it back into GPS. So let's bring it over to me. And I'm gonna show you a little punch out here. And usually when I do this, the battery, or the transmitter vibrates. So the transmitter will vibrate when you're on low battery, and it also will give you like an audible, like a warning, like a beep. So we got a shot here of me. I'm gonna actually take it out of GPS mode and just go into height hold mode. Oop, wanted to drift for me. Maybe I should go back to GPS. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Back to GPS, turn it towards me, and I see myself here in the screen. And so a little punch out. So not a ton of power, and the transmitter did vibrate a little bit there. So let's try and actually, let's bring it in and land it, and I wanna lower the camera a little bit. So I'm gonna bring this in for an auto land, or maybe I'll just bring it down myself. So there we go. And I am going to slightly put the camera just at a little bit of a downward angle. It will go straight down, but kind of such a narrow angle lens that it almost defeats the purpose, because you have to go pretty high to get anything good when the camera's straight down. So I idle up the motors there, and let's go up. And so now let's just go up a little bit more. Again, we got a little bit of a narrow angle lens here. So we're shooting the pavilion. Maybe go up a little more. And when I give it throttle there, the transmitter is vibrating at me. So I am getting probably close to the end of our battery here. And let's just shoot around the park a little bit. Let's go out this way towards the playground. Oh, we got a plane up there in the distance. Looks like they're doing touch and goes from the airport. That's not, well, it's a pretty good distance away, but you know, as the crow flies, it's really not that far. But they're pretty far up there, and they're far away, and I'm not gonna go any higher than this, so I'm not gonna worry about it too much. So we're out over the park. I can see that tree. Now it seems like we're getting our low battery maybe. Yep. So I am gonna bring it back. I don't like to mess around with this proprietary battery. Our FPV signal is getting weak too, probably as a result of the low battery. So I'm gonna bring it in here. Not 100% sure what the flight time was on that. We are still recording. This one does record in, I think, 5-minute clips or something like that. So if you forget to kill your, if you forget to stop your recording, you're not gonna lose your whole thing in theory. So we're on the ground, and I'm gonna go down and out, and that's gonna stop it. I am going to stop my recording. Should have stopped it. This one does take stills also, but they're not the best quality. So this will tell you we are down to 1 dot on our battery. I can't see, what is the voltage on here? Hard to read right now in the bright sun. Can't really read it, so, but we're at the end of it, so let's shut it off here. And that's off now. And I'm gonna shut my transmitter off. And there you go. There's your flight review of the Cheerson CX23. It does have the landing legs, like I said, but I do like flying it. Look at this bee, man. He is just, is that a bee or what is, I'm not even sure, a wasp or, I am not sure, but he likes me today. Definitely likes me and the quad. He likes this quad and the transmitter apparently. So, CX23, I wish it had a slightly better camera on it, and I wish, you know, if it had the better camera, I would say that this one comes in at GearBest for about 260 bucks. If it had a better camera and maybe even a 1-axis gimbal or a way to control the camera via the transmitter, I'd say the 260 is probably worth it. But with the camera in the state that it is, I think it's a little bit expensive, but it is pretty cool. It has such a small form factor, and I don't think I mentioned that in this factor with the battery, without the landing legs, it comes in at 225 grams. So not necessary for you hobbyists to register your quads anymore, but if you had to, this one would be under it. So it is pretty good piece of engineering that they got all this tech into such a small form factor. I don't think it's like a serious competitor to the DJI Spark or something like that. It is, you know, it flies very well, and it flies really well in windy conditions. It's fairly calm out here today, but I have flown this in the wind, and the GPS hold works pretty good. I'll roll some footage on that. The quad was kind of like this, holding its position, but it was staying put. So that's pretty impressive in my opinion. So it is a nice flyer. I do think it is a little bit overpriced, but if you're interested in it, or if you want to check out something like the Spark but you just can't afford it, this one is a decent option. Wish the camera on it was a little bit better. I do like that it comes with the 5.8 gigahertz FPV screen, so you can see what you're shooting at all times, basically real time, very low latency, so that's definitely a plus. So thanks again to GearBest. I'll leave you guys with some flight footage, and if you're interested in the CX23 here, I'll have it linked in the description. Thanks for watching, guys.
She's a